Yeah.
The thing that for me, the most disgusting part is when her finger goes through the nostril and the nostril becomes bigger, and also the one that goes through the eye, and the eye is pushed and it goes out of the eye, and I'm like, oh my god, it was so disgusting and so creepy. I've never seen anything like this, man.
This podcast is brought to you by Befores and Afters magazine. Befores and Afters magazine is the monthly print mag from VFX journalist Ian Fales. Go in-depth on key visual effects topics with major VFX supervisors, artists and studios. Each issue covers a different area like creature animation, miniatures, on-set VFX and VFX tools. Find your copy at beforesandafters.com/magazine.
This podcast is also brought to you by HUGOSDESK new compositing course. Join today to have access to 150 pre-recorded classes, 50 hours of training, using real production assets covering industry standard techniques with over 200 gigs of showreel material and access to a private Discord channel with over 2,300 students. This course is endorsed by Foundry and has access to a Foundry student license paid separately. Join today at hugosdesk.myshopify.com. And now on to the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to this VFX Notes. I'm Ian Fales from Befores and Afters, and I'm here with Hugo from Hugo's Desk. Hi Hugo, how are you?
Hey Ian, how are you doing?
Very good. We've been really enjoying diving in at the moment into some films that made it to the Visual Effects Bake Off last year, but didn't go all the way to being nominated for an Oscar for visual effects. Those films that were nominated for an Oscar for visual effects are in our YouTube VFX Notes main season of the 2025 VFX Oscar nominees. There are also some super fun episodes as well, Hugo, right?
Yeah, there are. Yeah, but this is our opportunity to do, because, you know, we always, every year we do the 5 nominees, but I always feel a bit bad. Like, the other 5 are really good as well, and I'm always like, oh man, we should have done those movies as well. And that's kind of how this kind of like ended up happening, really.
Yeah, yeah. Think of it like a mini season.
Yeah.
Where we're often also just diving into one particular aspect of the film.
Yeah.
In this case, we're going to dive in a little bit more into one particular visual effect, which I think is probably the outstanding visual effect from the year. And the film has an incredible amount of work as well. But Hugo, we're going to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine, one of your favorite films from 2024, right?
Okay. Okay. I thought it was funny. Yes, I did laugh a few times. I watched the movie twice now. But the movie, I mean, it's okay. It's a bit forgettable. I just felt that it was a bit, I don't know. There's a lot of things going on here on this movie. It's a bit complicated. I feel like for anyone that is joining in the Marvel universe to watch this movie, it's going to be tricky, because this movie requires you to watch multiple movies and also a full TV show for you to even get into it, because you know, it's complicated on that sense.
It definitely leaned in a lot heavier than I expected it would on the original X-Men franchise.
Yeah.
And of course on Loki.
Yeah.
The TV series. And I love that actually, Hugo, because I'm a fan of both.
Yeah. But
definitely some friends of mine who hadn't seen X-Men for a long time or hadn't watched Loki were like, what's happening?
What's going on here? Yeah, exactly. I watched Loki almost until the end. I couldn't bear it anymore, so I didn't watch the whole thing. And so for me, Loki is really, for me, it was incredibly boring. But I felt that this movie is having a recurring issue with Marvel movies ever since we had like the final Avengers movie with
Endgame is the final movie.
Exactly. Yeah. After Endgame, I really felt that most of these movies are really trying a bit too hard. And that's why That's why I told you that I didn't really enjoy this movie that much. I think it's too much. I wish the movie was just a separate movie. It had its own story, and you could follow it without having to know 10 TV shows and 20 movies for you to try to understand it. I'm fortunate enough that I've watched a lot of them, and so I'm a big fan of the original X-Men, and so of course I got all those jokes and all those little things, with Elektra and Blade and Gambit. It was nice to see all those things, but I think the movie I think these movies are too much dependent on the other shows and on the other movies, and I get it. I understand that they want to make sure people watch everything, but it doesn't make for an interesting movie by itself. I just feel that it's a bit of a problem.
I think in this case, I disagree because the charisma of Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman carry the movie through, right?
It did, yes.
Carry the movie. I mean, clearly Absolutely. The movie is hugely successful, more than $1 billion.
Oh, yeah. It's probably the only successful movie in a long time, like a big successful from Marvel
from Marvel,
a long time.
Yeah. And that is because the Deadpool franchise is amazing. People love Hugh Jackman. And can I say, people probably loved tracing back through that geeky X-Men-y and other stuff, right? So they knew what they were doing. It worked. It hasn't worked on a more recent film, Captain America: Brave New World, where they kind of tried to look back into the Hulk franchise, and you had to sort of remember things from an old Hulk film, which I certainly didn't. So I'm not sure that they tried it just because of Deadpool and Wolverine, but it didn't work on that film in terms of the nostalgia value, right?
Yeah.
I thought, in fact, it went even further than nostalgia. I think it's a love letter to those X-Men films, right? Which were done under Fox and now really come under the Disney franchise. I think it is a love letter to how the X-Men films were really the first most successful comic book films. And they're trying to say, hey, Bryan Singer and others, you did it. You made those happen, and we want to sort of celebrate it. And whether the audience cares about that, who knows?
Of course.
But I certainly felt like that, and I do have a lot of fondness for those X-Men films. But really, it's about the shenanigans, isn't it, Hugo, between Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds? Like, that's what this film is actually really about, and why people went to see it.
It is, and I can't really. I think that's my problem with it, because I think the original X-Men movies are they're proper movies. They're like films with like a really good balance and a good story, and they're really through the heart. They're really good movies. A bit more old school than this. I just feel that this movie has really some cool stuff. I really enjoyed the opening credits. That was really funny. I really enjoyed the montage with all the Wolverines, including Henry Cavill and everything. That was a really funny moment with the little tiny Wolverine and everything. There was some really, really hilarious moments on the movie. And of course, like you said, all those cameos, from Sabretooth and from Elektra and Blade, and that was all really interesting and really cool. But I just feel sometimes that with Deadpool movies, and especially with movies with Ryan Reynolds, I feel that it's just too many jokes, and it just never stops. It's just a joke after a joke after a joke after a joke, and breaking the fourth wall and again and again and again. And I only feel that it's not very even, and it kind of becomes so silly at some point that it's not even a movie anymore. And I don't know. I can't attach myself to this kind of. This is not a movie. It wasn't. It's like I don't know. It's like a little montage of little hits from the past that we all love and the fans love. But is there really a movie here? Not really. I mean, it's kind of It's a fan service, and I get it. I get it.
Maybe just on that, what they managed to make though was definitely a popcorn film
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
drew people to the cinema, and just you got to see some crazy shit. And the cameos and fan service stuff. Like, I was just in a press screening and people were still clapping and celebrating, right? Like, especially when Chris, what's his name? So many Chris's. Chris Evans.
You mean Captain America? Yeah. While
Chris
he's not playing
Evans,
Captain America.
yeah, comes in and you think he's going to do something else and he says flame on. And also when he gets stripped down to bones and flesh. I mean, people lost their shit during my screening. Yeah. So I knew that worked. You're kind of right. The story with Cassandra and Paradox and that sort of thing, I mean, it takes a back seat in a way.
It's paper thin, man. It's like a little paper. Nice
however,
paper.
I did like Cassandra as a baddie. I thought
me too.
That worked well.
She was really cool.
And
no, I feel the film. I think the best way of me explaining is that I love Blade so much, and I love X-Men and X-Men 2, X2 so much, and I think they're really serious and really groundbreaking movies. And I just feel that it's a bit weird that they're just little jokes in another movie. I don't know. I don't really doesn't really gel with me. I think those movies are much better than this one, and it's a bit weird that they're becoming punchlines on this movie. I don't know. I'm sure people love it. So what can I say? But there are quite a lot of really interesting moments during the movie that I really enjoyed, and I like I said, I loved the Wolverine montage. Really laughed my ass on the Odyssey fight. That was quite funny, that them fighting inside and on the Odyssey. And yes. I also think, of course, the visual effect sequence that we're going to talk about as well is also a stand-out for me, because it was something I've never really seen in my life at all.
Yeah.
So.
Look, those sequences are great. I just want to also talk a little bit about the director for a moment, Sean Levi. Yeah. I mean, he's an interesting filmmaker to me, because he has created this allegiance with Ryan Reynolds now over a couple of different films. And I think that's interesting, going into this production, about you can sort of tell they've got some kind of great banter thing happening, right? Yeah. And the films I'm thinking of are Free Guy and The Adam Project, that they've done previously. Of course, Sean has also done the Night at the Museum films, which I'm a huge fan of. And he did Real Steel, which I also, and that was with Hugh Jackman. They're some of my favorite kind of family, original sort of stories that work really well. He doesn't always hit a home run, Sean Levi. I don't actually like the Adam Project. And Free Guy, I think we talked about on this podcast previously. We watched it once and didn't like it. And then I watched it again and thought, oh, it's actually really, really good.
Yeah.
Just to talk about Sean for a minute, I think he's a really interesting filmmaker that clearly understands visual effects.
Yeah.
But probably more than most is a bit of a producer/director these days.
Yeah. And
he's got like a whole company doing that stuff. It's really kind of interesting way that he's come into the Marvel universe to make Deadpool and Wolverine.
Well, his contribution to cinema and to TV is really outstanding. His production company, 21 Labs, of course, is famously responsible for Stranger Things, and so he's super heavily involved on the development of Stranger Things and for it to become what it is today. Since it's his own company, he's still the CEO of that company, and so shout out to him, because he's really important figure in filmmaking and TV shows and making movies. He's really doing a different work, really. Like, his films are different, and this movie is different from the other movies. And like you said, like his partnership with Ryan Reynolds is kind of looking like it's gonna be going to continue probably, most likely.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
I think they gel well with their type of humor. I think that's the thing, this kind of like really dry humor, like third wall breaking, kind of silly kind of humor, kind of fits in really well with Ryan's work, because Ryan, I mean, he's made a career out of this kind of humor now. I don't even think he does any other type of movie than this type of movie. He only does these silly movies. I haven't seen him doing a serious movie in a long time. I think he's given up on that, I think, pretty much.
Well, it's not a serious movie, but he tried one with this film called If. He's not the director or anything of it. Yeah. And it was about imaginary friends. So it's
I didn't watch that. I didn't saw that movie. Is it nice?
It's terrible.
Great.
It's actually nice, but doesn't work in my opinion. Yeah. And he kind of plays that a bit more serious. He's not actually the Joker so much in that as the characters around the little girl. But anyway. Yeah, I'm sure that Ryan Reynolds would want to do more drama at some point.
Oh, yeah. I think so too. I think he's just it's a brand right now. He's like, he has his own brand. It's quite, I'm not a big fan of his work, and I'm not a big fan of him as an actor, but I have to really respect, because he's not only a really famous actor, but he's an incredibly successful businessman. With multiple businesses, including gin, drinks, and all. Like, he does a lot of different things, which is really impressive. You mentioned the Night in the Museum. I've never seen the Night in the Museum films. Are they cool? Are they good?
My god!
I really think I'm gonna like them. I just never really got
really
the hang
watchable.
To watch them.
Ben Stiller does a great job in those.
I really like Ben Stiller, so I'm sure I'm gonna like it. So and
yeah.
Robin Williams is on the movie as well. Is on the first one at least, or
mostly the first one. First one, yeah.
I need to watch them. There's 3, right? There's 3 movies.
There might even be more, but they're really fun in a different way. Yes,
I need to watch them.
I was only going to say, I think I know what you mean about Ryan Reynolds. However, we have him to thank for these Deadpool films, clearly.
I know. It was because of him.
This sort of famous first film where they made this beautiful previs that Blur had done, and then, more than a previs, a proof of concept type animation that was leaked, and we'll never know who did that. But I think Ryan Reynolds, I think he came about for Fox and Marvel at the right time to do something different, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is even before Marvel's woes at the moment.
Yeah.
And obviously Deadpool is an adult's Marvel film, and there's crazy, crazy stuff that happens in all 3 now. I would say just on that point, though, the crazy stuff that happens in Deadpool and Wolverine, there is a point even in that car fight where they're just slicing into each other and doing all this stuff, where it's just so crazy that you sort of go, all right, well, no, they can't die, so I don't feel any kind of
what's
problem.
the point of the fight? Yeah.
and then the large Wolverine, multiple Deadpools fight is sort of the same, feels a bit over the top. But I think no other movie can do that, and we really have to thank Ryan Reynolds for going there.
Yeah,
and
I'm really glad that they let him still say the shit he says on the movie, because he says some weird fucking stuff on the movie, man. Like with drugs and pegging and sex, and he says some crazy shit,
wacko.
So rowdy and so so sexual, and so I'm quite shocked and also surprised that they let him loose like that, because I guess that it couldn't. I don't think you would accept to do the movie if they couldn't have done that. I'm sure, because that's what Deadpool is.
That's what Deadpool is.
Yeah,
and it's meant to be rated R or whatever the right rating is in your country, and so it fits, right? It works, but. The subversiveness and the fourth wall breaks and the violence it fits in with Deadpool. It's just you were kind of mentioning that at some point you were like, okay, I just want a story here, and I think most people went to the movie not caring about that at all.
I know.
Yeah.
I don't believe I'm the target demographic for this movie.
Yeah.
I don't think I am.
Yeah.
And I still enjoyed it, and I still had a nice time watching it. For not just for the show, but I watched it last year, even before we even knew that it was going to be part of the Oscars or anything. So I watched it for my own volition. I watched the movie.
Yeah.
I'm a fan. I think the first Deadpool is really good, actually. I really laughed, but I didn't really like Deadpool 2. I didn't thought it was as good as the first one. I don't know if you liked it, but I think the first one is a better movie than the second one.
Deadpool 2 is interesting. I'm not sure I remember the plot as well. And of course, Tim Miller was the director of the first one, was not involved in the same way. So it doesn't quite hit home. But yeah, in general, I'm a big fan of these films, and I hope they do another one. I mean, clearly...
Well, like he says multiple times on the movie, like, you're going to do this until you're 90. I think Hugh Jackman is probably going to continue as well. And he's going to, like, they're never going to... That's actually one of the funniest parts of the movie, is the right beginning where they just spit all over Logan's legacy. Like, and just...
I know.
I love it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the visual effects, and we really are just going to narrow in on one sequence because there's so much to talk about in the film. The visual effects supervisor was Sven Gilberg, who's done a couple of Marvel films now, and what we're going to talk about is this kind of effect in the film, which, like, the visual effects team, as Swin told me for a befores and afters article, they just called the effect hands through face. And it really is the most disgusting thing in the film, actually, isn't it? Despite all the blood and gore. It's when horrible. Cassandra is able to use her powers to put her fingers through... she does it to a couple of people, right, Hugo? Paradox, to Wolverine, and to Deadpool himself.
Yeah.
So, just quickly on that, Framestore did the shots that go through Wolverine's forehead, but also Paradox. And I'd say the Paradox stuff is the main draw card stuff.
Yeah.
And then ILM did a similar effect through Deadpool's face when they're in Cassandra's lair.
Yeah.
What do you remember when you saw this film for the first time, Hugo? Like, what did you think when you saw this?
Well, when I first saw the moment with Deadpool, it wasn't as disgusting because he has the mask, so the hand is going through, and it's like, it's still creepy, but you don't really fully realize what's happening. And I think on that sequence, the film, like you said, the film is filled with visual effects. It's really, really heavy in visual effects. And I think on that sequence, the thing that most impressed me, and the thing that I was more shocked, was when Chris is like reduced to a puddle of bones and blood. I think that was the thing that really struck me. I think it was when I saw Paradox, when I saw more to the end of the movie, and I saw her fingers going through the eye and going through the nose, and like, that's when it really, really became really uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. This is the first time ever that I've seen like someone going through someone's face, and I saw it on the documentaries that it really is inspired by the comic book. The comic book has this effect, and it's so well achieved. Like, it's the comic book, of course, it's easier because you can like fool around with a lot of things, but this is like a photorealistic, completely physically accurate version of this thing. And the thing that for me the most disgusting part is when her finger goes through the nostril, and the nostril becomes bigger, and also the one that goes through the eye, and the eye is pushed and it goes out of the eye, and I'm like, oh my god, it really creeps me the fuck out. It was so disgusting and so creepy. I've never seen anything like this, man. Ever.
And I think it's an interesting effect in that we're so used to seeing some big visual effects in Marvel films, but they're often related to some sort of fight
Yeah.
or an explosion or a spacecraft or something like that, or a creature, right? In this case, where especially when she's putting it through paradox, which is Matthew McFadden, it's a long shot or series of shots, right? So you get to see it, and you do get to see the skin moved in little bits. Oh my god,
it's so fucking disgusting, man.
Love it.
Like, no, it's really good.
Yeah.
It's really good work.
A quick plug here for befores and afters. I caught up with Sven at the View conference last year, and I had him describe to me from the beginning to the end how they achieved the effect. And the article on befores and afters, which is we called it Hands Through Face, is basically just in Sven's words about how they did this effect. So you can see it there, plus see some of Framestore's work on the paradox sequence. And then there's been a couple of breakdown videos that Marvel have released, and where you can see, how they did the effect. But Hugo, just from like a general point of view, I felt like they really nailed the approach here, because it feels like the characters, right? It feels like the actor for Cassandra, which is Emma Corrin, and it feels like Paradox, Matthew, are there together, right? Being manipulated. And then when Framestore and ILM had to do it in CG, they've managed to get a really, really close track of the actors, and effectively also replace parts of the actors, things like hands, of course, but parts of the face. But you never, my takeaway is that you never feel like it's just some kind of digital human takeover.
No,
it just feels.
I think that's why it's
authentic.
So disgusting, and that's why it's so creepy, because it's so photoreal. And when you see the breakdowns, I'll be playing them while we're talking. See the breakdowns, you clearly see it's a full CG replacement. So they shot a plate, of course, and they did a complete replica of the face to the pores.
But you say CG replacement. I mean, I'm not. It's not always a CG replacement. It's just that they're using the CG Matthew to do a really close match move and body track, right? And then absolutely bringing in real bits of his face and using CG as well. But I wouldn't call it a full CG replacement.
Well, no. What I mean is like they have the entire face, skin, and head has to be completely done in CG. They have to do a complete replica of it. Yeah. An absolute replica, so that they can then merge in composite with the head that is there.
Yes.
Because otherwise you can't. So that is why it's so impressive, because they ended up doing, as I said, a complete duplicate in CG, so they could bounce from one. That's why it looks so good, I think. Of course, it helps that they have the actor there, of course, but the actor, it's quite limited. When they shot it, Cassandra is just like pretending that she's putting the hand, and then there's no hand, of course. She's just like having the hand on the side or whatever, and he's just there standing like with his eyes like this. And so it's a bit tricky for the actors themselves to do anything about it. They can't really act this out. And so, but the really interesting construction is that they went into a lot of detail where they've built the entire skull and they build the entire muscle system.
Yes.
And so when the hand is going across it and under the skin, you can feel that her hand is actually touching something hard, which is the bone. And so her hand goes through the bone, and you even see the fingertips going through it. And I think that's why it works so well. The physically accurate CG that they've created becomes so much, because it would have been so simple to just float the hand in. It could have just float around, and most likely would have looked very cartoonish, because the hand would just, or almost like when you have these effects where they go through objects, like almost like a
ghost type thing or something.
Exactly like that. It could have worked really bad. It would have just not felt creepy at all. But the fact that she's touching, and actually we feel that there's a bone structure inside, and the skin is being stretched, and the pores are being stretched, and the veins are being stretched, and you even see the vein structure getting bluer and getting thicker because the hand is underneath, and so the muscles and the blood flows in a different way, and so it's really detailed. They really did a great job with especially making him look worse and worse and worse, because he starts having black eyes and he starts becoming quite stretched, and so even his skin becomes, it's almost like he's been beaten up, but he was beaten up from the inside. It's just like so fucking creepy.
Yeah. And what's even more amazing, just as you're talking about how they actually shot it and how much was replaced, I think, and this is a classic Marvel thing, they came to do audience test screenings, and the response to that was, oh, we need to actually round out the Cassandra character a bit more and give her a few more lines.
Yeah.
But they didn't have Emma and Matthew available to shoot the scene again, to do all the hand stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really loved what Matthew had done in his original performance. So they just had Emma redo and add more lines to her performance, but without Matthew there.
Yeah.
And then so actually what ultimately is the most of part of the performance is her doing all that manipulation without Matthew, right? Yeah. And then still using his original performance, which I think is, we can do it. Visual effects artists can do it. And the challenge there is there's a moving camera, in both different plates. There's also her pretending to do it to an actor. And then we have such close interaction because of the style of the shot. Yeah. And so you wouldn't have even known that they weren't together in the room for a lot of that sequence.
Yeah. Yeah.
So hats off to everyone at Framestore for pulling that off. Just so good.
Yeah. I this is a really standout sequence. After reading about that in the interview and reading it from your articles and also reading more about this, it's even more impressive to know that they've stitched it in so many ways. I really feel that this is really a sequence that is going to stay for a long time. Like I said, I've never seen anything like this, and Marvel tends to be really just about this final act where you have this massive fight, and they have that. They have the fight a bit earlier on. They have both of them. They have one massive fight of them both against all the Deadpools, and then they have another massive fight inside of the body of Ant-Man, and so they have two massive fights, actually, not even just one. But they left this to the end, and I thought that was awesome, because this is more to the end of the movie, and as the conclusion goes in and we find Paradox and see what he's trying to do, I really like this. I like this a lot because it's a more experimental type of VFX, and it's something that could have really looked bad. It was so easy to ruin it, and I think they did a fantastic job. And this also works really well because of the performance as well. I think the actor that does Emma, that acts as Cassandra, she's fantastic. She's really good on the movie. I think she does a great job. She's a really good villain. I really like that. Really enjoyed it, and I hope we see her again. I'm not sure we will, but I hope so. It would have been nice if we see some prequel or something else.
Yeah, she does the villain with a purpose well. Which is always the struggle when you're only in one film or one sequence, even sometimes. Yeah. I think Emma Corrin is awesome in this. I was going to mention too, Hugo, and kind of another plug for that article. We won't go into the detail of it, but Swen actually also described the sequence where Chris Evans gets his body ripped off him. And I think there's some really nice tidbits there about things like the eye blinks and how they would have to move parts of his insides around to get that happening. It's a super cool short sequence that ILM did. But just have a look at that article for some extra funny information that Swen shares there. The film is full of, I think, really complicated digital visual effects work.
I know.
There's this Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sure you're gonna say.
Well, there's like a fight between Wolverine and Deadpool where I think maybe Hugh Jackman wasn't available or the stunt person wasn't always available, and he does a bit of on the all fours running. So ILM there had to do some pretty neat digital human face replacement work, right? And we know about face replacement work in the 2D world. We know about digidoubles. Things have kind of moved on to be, this deep fake face swapping stuff. And it's basically AI face replacement. And there it is in this brief sequence. I mean, it's probably elsewhere too. But that's actually pretty cool work that I don't think anyone would have noticed unless they'd seen these breakdowns.
Yeah.
One other sequence I think is really super cool, or it's not actually a sequence, it's throughout the whole movie, which is Weather Effects and they've done it on the previous Deadpool movies too, where Deadpool has a full face mask, but his eyes move and his face bits move. And Weta has a really great way of doing that where they're not just warping the plate photography, right? They're doing more than that. And I did write about that as well. And then they also had to do it where Wolverine wears his full covering over his eyes as well. So there's a lot of work in this film that we can't all cover, but I feel like so much of it is high quality, super duper stuff that just goes by in an instant.
It does. There's so much. Like I just there's the regular type of VFX, of course, but then there's some really outstanding sequences, like that fight against all the Deadpools, the sidetrack shot where you have the dolly and they just keep fighting and fighting them and fighting them and fighting them and fighting them. That is a fantastic sequence and really well orchestrated. Great combination between effects and visual effects and stunts work as well. I especially now watching some of the breakdowns and seeing some of the work, the amount of blue screen that this movie has, the amount of visual effects takeover that it has, especially on the fight sequences between Deadpool and Wolverine, where they replace limbs and replace pieces of the hands, and they replace body parts with blood and put extra blood and kind of like adjust certain parts. And the film has so many little things. I was actually quite surprised that the movie didn't get nominated. I was, because it's, I think it's the typical movie of one. There's always one nominee, usually, at least in the past. Now we didn't get one, but there's always one nominee, which is one of these Marvel movies that has 20,000 VFX shots, and it has so much work, and it has a lot of companies involved, and often it gets into the final five. And so I was quite surprised, because I actually thought this was going to get it, was going to get to the final five.
Marvel films have struggled in the past a little bit. I mean, maybe am I wrong here? But Spider-Man 2 might have been the last big comic book win in terms of that sort of thing.
But they usually get to one nominated, at least. That's the thing.
And some Iron Man films have been in there and whatnot. Absolutely. Yeah. But yes, the work is incredible, and I think it's kind of the standout work from Marvel in the last couple of years as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the highest quality, right? Like, that's what I mean. Like,
I totally agree.
We had a few ones that were a bit iffy. Like, I think Ant-Man was a bit uneven. Yeah, it was a bit uneven in terms of quality. I think Captain Marvel, there was a couple of things that were a bit weird and not really completely there. But I think this is like the quality of this movie in terms of visual effects is kind of out there with the old kind of Marvel movies that we used to have.
I agree. I think it's amazing. And, we haven't even mentioned Dogpool.
Oh my God, yeah.
Hugo. Which is a real dog. Oh my God.
It's not a VFX, I know. I thought it was, but it's not.
But does have some really great augmentation done by Framestore for when it has to wear the glasses and do some kind of leaping kind of stuff, They do a few. I think they very likely had a digital version of the dog, and it gets replaced when it needs to do some crazy stunts. But I was like interviewing their supervisor, and I said, "Oh, so how did you like build this CG dog?" And they're like, "It's a real dog." And I'm like, "A dog like that exists?" Like, I didn't realize that. I mean, you know, on the face of it, it's quite an ugly, crazy-looking dog, but of course, many people like those dogs. I don't want to be mean to people who like those dogs, Hugo.
No, but this movie is it's quite shocking when you start looking at the breakdowns, especially when you start looking at the breakdowns, you know, from Barnstorm and from Reynolds, and when you start looking at the other breakdowns, not just from ILM and from Framestore, you start really understanding that this movie, pretty much every shot was a VFX shot, because almost everything has a replacement behind it, or a blue screen, or any even just simple stuff like the fire on the hand of that dude, you know, the guy that has like the little fire in his hand. There's like this big lamp LED that they put on his hand, and he's walking around with that thing, and then they had to replace it. Every single shot pretty much has some kind of VFX or augmentation or tweak, and I don't think people really realize that when they're watching it, because the film is like a comedy, and it's always messing with you, and it's always like breaking the fourth wall, and I think the film, because it has so many sequences, I don't think people really even realize that there's probably over 2,000 visual effects on this movie. I mean, it's just crazy. And the movie is quite long as well, and so it's really impressive what's there, you know.
Yes, totally agree. I think the visual effects team nailed it. Congrats to them for getting into the Bake Off. Would have loved to have seen a Marvel film in the top 5. I think it's always been, you know, a struggle of some Marvel films. But here they got to elevate things to the next level, I think, on a Marvel film. And that Cassandra hands-through face is just one of those elevations. So, yeah, that's fun to talk about, those different things, Hugo, and I'm glad we could go into a little bit of detail on just one type of shot.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Excellent. Okay.
Thanks for watching, everyone, and really hope you're enjoying these bonus videos. There'll be more to come every week. Great to talk to you about it, Hugo. Thanks very much.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.